Philip and Gladys had been married for 5 years, and in the beginning, everything was perfect. Philip adored Gladys for who she was. Her slim figure, her infectious laughter, and the way she always cared about him. They had built a happy life together, and for a while it seemed like nothing could come between them. But as time passed, Philip's attitude began to change. His once loving comments about her appearance turned into criticisms. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, he looked at her with dissatisfaction. "You're too skinny, Gladys," Philip said, his voice flat. Gladys was taken aback. "What do you mean? You've always liked me like this." Philip shook his head. "I want you to look more like a real woman, with curves. This slim look is unattractive." The words stung Gladys deeply. She had always been proud of her figure, knowing that Philip loved her just the way she was. But now, hearing him say those things made her feel like she wasn't enough anymore. "But you married me like this," she protested. "What's changed?" Philip frowned, barely looking at her. "I just think you'd look better if you gained some weight. You don't need to be so slim anymore. It's not attractive to me." Gladys felt her heart drop. She didn't know what to say. The man she loved and had spent years with was suddenly asking her to change something so fundamental about herself. That night, as she lay in bed, her thoughts wouldn't stop racing. Was she really too thin? Did she need to change to make Philip happy? Feeling the pressure to please her husband, Gladys made a decision. She would gain weight no matter what it took. She loved Philip, and if this was what he wanted, she would do it. The next day, she started eating more than usual: snacks, fast food, large meals, anything that could help her gain the weight Philip seemed to want. Philip encouraged her, always making sure there was plenty of food in the house. He brought home her favorite sweets, loaded the fridge with unhealthy snacks, and always insisted she eat more at meals. "Eat up, Gladys," he would say with a smile. "You need to put on a little weight." Though she complied, Gladys felt torn. She was eating for Philip, not for herself, and it was beginning to take a toll on her mentally. She often felt bloated and uncomfortable, but she pushed through, telling herself that this was what love required. One afternoon, Gladys confided in her best friend, Margaret, hoping for some support. "Philip thinks I'm too skinny," she told her, her voice laced with frustration. "He wants me to gain weight, and I've been eating so much lately just to make him happy." To her surprise, Margaret nodded in agreement. "He's not wrong, Gladys. You've always been on the thin side. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to put on a little weight. It could make you look healthier." Gladys stared at her friend in disbelief. She had expected Margaret to take her side, but instead she echoed Philip's criticisms. It felt like a betrayal. "You really think so?" Gladys asked, her voice soft and uncertain. Margaret nodded. "I'm just saying, you might look better with a few extra pounds." "Don't take it the wrong way." Gladys left the conversation feeling even more confused and insecure. First her husband, now her best friend. Was everyone starting to see her the same way? As if Philip's and Margaret's words weren't enough, the next blow came from Philip's mother. One evening she came to visit, her sharp eyes immediately sizing up Gladys. "You're looking so thin, Gladys," she remarked coldly. "I don't understand how you can look like this, especially with a wealthy husband like Philip. People talk, you know. They say, 'Look at the poor girl he married. She looks like she's starving.' It's embarrassing for the family." Gladys's heart sank. She had always known that Philip's mother didn't approve of their marriage, but this was cruel. "I'm trying to gain weight," Gladys replied, her voice barely a whisper. Philip's mother sneered. "You should have started a long time ago. I never approved of this relationship, and now I see I was right. You're not good enough for my son." Those words hit Gladys like a punch to the stomach. After Philip and Margaret's comments, this was the last thing she needed to hear. She tried to hold back the tears, but they flowed freely as soon as she was alone. Night after night, Gladys cried herself to sleep, feeling trapped in a body she no longer recognized, in a marriage that was crumbling before her eyes. She continued eating, pushing herself to gain the weight Philip wanted, but with each passing day, she felt more lost. Despite all the emotional pain, Gladys kept eating. Slowly, she began to gain weight. Her slim figure gave way to curves, but instead of feeling satisfied, she felt heavier, emotionally and physically. She wasn't herself anymore. Philip's compliments were sparse, and his attention seemed to be elsewhere. Gladys noticed the way he glanced at slim women when they were out, the way he no longer seemed to be attracted to her, even though he was the one who had pushed her to change. Then came the moment that shattered her completely. Philip began staying out late, and one night she overheard a phone call. He was talking to another woman, her worst fear come true. Philip wasn't just uninterested in her, he was cheating on her, seeking out the slim women he had once loved her for being. Devastated, Gladys looked at herself in the mirror, tears streaming down her face. She had changed everything for him, and it still wasn't enough. One afternoon, while Gladys was cleaning the kitchen, her phone rang. The number was unknown, but she decided to answer. "Hello?" Gladys said, her voice calm. There was a brief pause before a woman's voice spoke on the other end. "I thought you should know something. Your best friend Margaret has been sleeping with your husband. They've been seeing each other for months." Gladys froze, the plate she was holding slipping from her hands and shattering on the floor. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of the words. Margaret, her best friend. It couldn't be true. "Who is this?" Gladys demanded, but the caller hung up without another word. Her hands shook as she lowered the phone. Thoughts raced through her mind. Could it really be true? She thought about how Margaret had been acting strangely lately, always finding excuses not to come over or changing the subject whenever Philip was mentioned. And Philip, he had been distant, cold. Was it all connected? When Philip came home that evening, Gladys was waiting for him in the living room, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know how to bring it up, but she knew she had to confront him. "Philip, we need to talk," Gladys said, trying to keep her voice steady. He looked at her with a slight frown. "What is it now?" Gladys took a deep breath, her fingers trembling. "I got a phone call today. Someone said that you've been sleeping with Margaret. Is it true?" Philip's expression changed, his face tightening with anger. "What? Margaret? That's ridiculous, Gladys. Who told you that nonsense?" Gladys's voice shook with emotion. "I don't know who it was, but they seem to know everything. You've been distant. You've been avoiding me, and now this. Please just tell me the truth." Philip's face hardened, and he glared at her. "I can't believe you would listen to some random caller instead of trusting your own husband. Are you really that stupid, Gladys? Margaret is your best friend, and you think I would do something like that?" Gladys felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I'm not stupid, Philip. I've noticed things too. You've been staying out late, acting strange. I just need to know the truth." Philip laughed bitterly. "The truth? The truth is you're overthinking everything, as usual. You've gained weight, you're insecure, and now you're looking for reasons to blame me for your own problems. Maybe if you spent more time taking care of yourself, instead of worrying about me, we wouldn't even be having this conversation." Gladys felt as though she had been punched in the stomach. She couldn't believe how cruel Philip was being. "I'm not blaming you for anything. I just want to know what's going on. Why won't you be honest with me?" Philip stood up and threw his hands in the air, pacing the room. "I'm done with this conversation, Gladys. You're being ridiculous. There's nothing going on with Margaret, and I can't believe you're even asking me this. Maybe you need to start focusing on yourself instead of accusing me of things I haven't done." Gladys was stunned by his words. She felt a mixture of heartbreak and anger swirling inside her. How could Philip turn this around on her when she was the one who had been faithful, who had done everything to please him? "Philip, you've changed. This isn't just about me. You don't look at me the same way anymore, and now you're acting like I'm the problem." Philip stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes cold. "Maybe the problem is that you're too obsessed with me. Maybe you should think about what you've done to push me away." Gladys stared at him, her heart breaking. The man she once loved, the man who had been her everything, was no longer the same person. She could see now that no matter what she did, she would never be enough for him. As Philip stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him, Gladys sank onto the couch, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. She couldn't believe what her life had become. The man she had built her future around, the man she had changed her entire life for, had turned into a stranger. And worst of all, he didn't even care. Her mind was racing. She needed to hear from Margaret herself, so she quickly dialed her number. The phone rang a few times before Margaret answered. "Margaret, I need to ask you something. Are you having an affair with my husband? Someone called and told me that you've been seeing him." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Margaret replied, "Gladys, how could you even think that? You're my best friend. Why would I do something like that to you?" Gladys wanted to believe her, but something felt off. "I don't know what to believe anymore. Philip has been distant, and now I'm hearing this. I just needed to hear it from you." Margaret began to cry. "Gladys, I swear I would never do that to you. I love you like a sister. Whoever told you that is lying, trying to break us apart. Please don't believe it." Gladys sighed, feeling a bit of relief. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe the caller was just trying to stir trouble. "I don't know what to think, Margaret. I'm sorry for asking, but I had to know." After the call, Margaret immediately dialed Philip. "Philip, do you know what Gladys just did? She accused me of sleeping with you. Can you believe that? I've never been so insulted in my life." Philip, already frustrated with Gladys, felt his temper rise. "What? She did what? That's unbelievable. Don't worry, Margaret. I'll handle it." When Philip got home that night, he marched over to Gladys. "You dared to accuse Margaret. How could you? She's your best friend." Gladys tried to explain. "I didn't accuse her. I just asked her. I needed to know. Someone called me and—" Before she could finish, Philip slapped her across the face. "You're pathetic, Gladys. Always making things up in your head, always causing problems. Margaret is your best friend, and you insult her with these stupid accusations. You're losing it." Gladys couldn't believe this was happening. The man she once loved was now hurting her, both emotionally and physically. Her heart shattered into pieces. As if things couldn't get worse, her phone rang. It was Philip's mother. Gladys hesitated but answered. "Gladys, what's wrong with you? I heard you've been causing problems again. If you spent half as much time being a good wife as you do creating drama, maybe you'd be pregnant by now." Gladys's breath caught in her throat. "I'm trying. You're a lazy fat girl who can't even take care of her own husband. You're ugly, and now look at you, getting fatter by the day. If you don't shape up, my son is going to leave you, and it will be your fault. Do you hear me?" Gladys could barely speak. "Yes, I hear you. And don't forget, everyone told you not to marry my son, didn't they? You were warned. He's too good for you, and now you're proving it." The call ended. Gladys dropped the phone, her entire body shaking. Philip's abuse, his mother's constant insults, the pressure to be someone she wasn't. It was all too much. She regretted ever marrying Philip. People had warned her that he was a mummy's boy, and now she was seeing it all come true. She thought about all the times she had ignored the red flags, believing that their love would be enough. But now it was clear that Philip no longer cared about her at all. He cared only about himself and his mother's approval. Gladys sat alone in the dark, crying uncontrollably. She couldn't live like this anymore. Something had to change, but for now, all she could do was cry. 2 months later, Margaret shared some exciting news with Gladys. She was pregnant. Gladys's initial reaction was pure happiness for her friend. She hugged Margaret and congratulated her, excited by the thought of her best friend starting a family. But when Gladys asked the obvious question, who the father was, Margaret hesitated. With a strange smile on her face, she replied, "You'll know soon, and it will surprise you." Gladys was puzzled. Why would Margaret say something like that? Was this supposed to be some kind of joke? She tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, telling herself that Margaret was probably just being playful. But as the days passed, that strange smile and cryptic comment kept playing in her mind. She couldn't stop wondering what Margaret had meant. Then, one morning, as Gladys was doing chores around the house, her phone rang. It was Philip's mother. Gladys hadn't spoken to her in weeks, so the call itself was already unusual, but nothing could have prepared her for what came next. Philip's mother's voice was cold, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "You should be ashamed of yourself, Gladys. You couldn't even give my son a child, and now look where we are." Gladys, confused, asked, "What are you talking about?" The response came like a slap in the face. "A lady more fertile than you is pregnant for my son. I'll be a grandmother soon, and she'll be the one giving Philip the family he deserves." Gladys's hands started shaking. She felt a wave of nausea, like the world was spinning around her. Her voice was weak as she stammered, "Who? Who is pregnant?" Philip's mother's voice dripped with disdain. "You'll find out soon enough. But just know this, Gladys, you failed. Philip deserves better, and now he has it." The call ended abruptly, leaving Gladys frozen in shock. She could hardly breathe. Her heart was racing, her mind running wild with possibilities. Who could this woman be? And how could Philip do this to her? When Philip came home that evening, Gladys was sitting in the living room, waiting for him. Her eyes were red from crying, her heart shattered by the cruel words from his mother. The moment Philip walked through the door, she stood up. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Is someone else pregnant for you?" Philip looked at her. "Yes, it's true," Philip said without hesitation. Gladys felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. "Who is it?" she whispered. "It's Margaret," Philip said plainly. At first, Gladys didn't understand. "Margaret? My best friend, Margaret?" "Yes," Philip replied. "She's pregnant and we'll be having a baby." The truth hit Gladys like a hammer. Her best friend, Margaret, the one she trusted with everything, was pregnant with her husband's child. How could this be happening? How could the two people she trusted most betray her like this? Tears filled Gladys's eyes as the realization sank in. Margaret, the person she had shared her deepest thoughts with, had been secretly involved with Philip. All the times she had confided in Margaret about her struggles, about her dreams of having a family, Margaret had been hiding this dark secret. Philip didn't even seem to care about the pain he had caused. He stood there, watching Gladys cry, and said, "Margaret will be moving in with us soon." "What?" Gladys managed to ask, her voice shaking. "She's carrying my child, Gladys. If you can't handle that, then you can leave." Gladys was stunned. Philip was telling her to accept Margaret into their home, into her life, or leave. How could he be so heartless? How could he act like this was a normal situation? Everything was falling apart. The marriage she had believed in, the life she had built, was crumbling before her eyes. Philip didn't care about her, about their vows, or about the love they once shared. And Margaret, the friend who had been by her side for years, had turned into the one person who destroyed it all. Gladys couldn't believe what she was hearing. The betrayal was too much, too painful. Philip was giving her an ultimatum: either live with this new reality or leave. But how could she stay in a home that now felt like a prison? How could she live with the people who had torn her life apart? As she sat there, tears streaming down her face, Gladys felt completely lost. Where could she go? What could she do? Margaret moved into the house, and everything changed for Gladys. The home that once felt like a place of love and comfort quickly turned into a living nightmare. From the very first day, it was clear that Margaret had no intention of making things easy for Gladys. She acted like the house belonged to her, walking around with confidence and treating Gladys like she didn't matter. Philip, who once used to care for Gladys, now barely spoke to her. When he did, his words were harsh and filled with irritation. Philip's mother constantly called, praising Margaret and insulting Gladys. "I'm so happy for you, Philip. You finally found someone who can give you a real family. Unlike that barren woman," she would say on the phone, loud enough for Gladys to hear. Margaret joined in too, always making nasty comments. "Gladys, why don't you lose some weight? You'd look less ugly if you tried. Maybe that's why Philip doesn't love you anymore," she would say with a smirk, knowing how much her words hurt. Every day she found new ways to make Gladys feel small. Whenever Philip was around, Margaret acted sweet and innocent. But when they were alone, she was cruel. She would call Gladys lazy, ugly, and worst of all, she reminded her daily that she couldn't have children. "It's no wonder Philip chose me," Margaret would say, her voice dripping with mockery. "At least I can give him what he wants." Gladys tried to talk to Philip about it, hoping he would step in and defend her, but Philip didn't care. "You're just jealous," he told her coldly. "Margaret is giving me a child, and you should be grateful she's even letting you stay here." Grateful? Gladys couldn't believe what she was hearing. How could she be grateful for someone who had stolen her husband and was now making her life miserable? But no matter how much she tried to explain the pain she was going through, Philip didn't listen. Instead, he sided with Margaret every time. The more Margaret's belly grew with the pregnancy, the more unbearable things became. She flaunted it constantly, rubbing her stomach and reminding Gladys that she was the one giving Philip a family. "This baby is the future of this house," Margaret would say, looking at Gladys with pity. "And you?" "Well, you're just in the way." Philip's mother called almost every day, asking how Margaret was feeling and giving her advice on pregnancy. But whenever Gladys's name came up, the insults would start. "She's just a useless woman," his mother would say. "She couldn't even give you one child. You should have left her a long time ago." Philip would agree, laughing along with his mother and Margaret as if they were talking about someone unimportant. It was as if Gladys wasn't even a person anymore. Gladys couldn't find peace anywhere. In her own home, she felt like a stranger. Margaret had taken everything: her husband, her happiness, and even her place in the family. And every time Philip allowed it, Gladys's heart broke a little more. Gladys tried to stay strong, but it was hard. The constant bullying from Margaret, the coldness from Philip, and the hateful calls from his mother wore her down. She felt like she was drowning in sadness, with no way out. There were nights when she cried herself to sleep, wondering how her life had become so miserable. In her quest to get pregnant, Gladys decided to visit her doctor. It had been a long time since she had seen him, and with everything going wrong in her life, she felt like this might be her last hope. She couldn't bear to stay in the house with Margaret and Philip any longer, listening to them talk about the baby that wasn't hers. When she arrived at the doctor's office, she felt nervous but hopeful. Maybe he would have an answer, something that would explain why she hadn't been able to have a child. After a while, the doctor called her in. He smiled kindly, but his face grew serious as he looked over her medical records. "Gladys," the doctor began, "I know it's been difficult for you, and I understand how much you want to have a baby. But after reviewing everything, I have to tell you that you have something called PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome." Gladys stared at him, confused. She had never heard of PCOS before. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The doctor explained patiently. "PCOS is a condition that affects your ovaries, which are the part of your body that helps make babies. It means that your ovaries aren't working as they should, and that can make it hard to get pregnant. Some women with PCOS don't release eggs regularly, and that's likely what's happening with you." Gladys felt her heart sink. She had always thought there was something wrong, but hearing it now made her fears real. "Does that mean I can't ever have a baby?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor shook his head. "It doesn't mean you can't have a baby. It just means it might be harder for you, and you'll need to take extra care of yourself. One of the things that can help is losing some weight and changing your diet. PCOS can be managed with a healthy lifestyle, and that can make it easier to get pregnant." Gladys listened carefully as the doctor continued. "You should try to eat more fruits, vegetables, and foods that are good for your body. Exercising, even just walking for a little while each day, can help too. The goal is to help your body work better, and that can increase your chances of getting pregnant." Gladys nodded slowly. The idea of changing her diet and losing weight wasn't something she had thought about before. It felt overwhelming, but if this was her chance to have a baby, she knew she had to try. "But it won't be easy," the doctor warned gently. "PCOS is something you'll have to manage for the rest of your life. But with the right steps, there's hope." Hope. That was something Gladys hadn't felt in a long time. Leaving the doctor's office, she held on to that word, even though her heart was heavy. There was a chance, but it wouldn't come without hard work. As she walked home, she thought about everything the doctor had said. She would have to take care of herself if she ever wanted to have a child. It felt like a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long while, she had something to hold on to. If losing weight and changing her habits would give her a chance to become a mother, she knew she would do everything she could to make it happen. Gladys was determined to follow the doctor's advice, so she started exercising at home. Every morning, she would wake up early, put on her workout clothes, and head outside to the compound. She would do simple exercises like jumping jacks, stretches, and jogging in place. It wasn't easy, but Gladys was focused on her goal. She wanted to get healthy, lose weight, and hopefully one day become a mother. But Margaret didn't like it at all. She complained about everything Gladys did, and soon she found another reason to cause trouble. One morning, Margaret went to Philip looking upset. "I can't sleep," she lied. "Every time Gladys exercises in the compound, it disturbs me and the baby. It's too noisy, and I'm worried it's not good for the child." Philip didn't even think twice. He marched straight to Gladys, who was in the middle of her workout. "Stop this nonsense," he shouted. Gladys froze, looking at him in shock. "You're disturbing my unborn child with all this jumping and running around. Can't you see Margaret is pregnant? A child you could never give me." The words cut deep, like a knife to Gladys's heart. She felt tears well up in her eyes, but fought to hold them back. Philip's words were cruel, and they hurt more than anything Margaret had ever said. He didn't care about her, only the baby that wasn't even born yet. Gladys wanted to scream, to defend herself, but she couldn't find the words. Instead, she nodded silently and stopped her exercises. She went back inside, feeling defeated. How could she continue like this? Every time she tried to improve herself, Margaret and Philip found a way to push her down. She had to do something different. She had to keep going, but not at home. Not where she was constantly reminded of her failures. That night, as she lay in bed, Gladys made a decision. The next morning, she would register at a gym. It wasn't far from the house, and she knew it would be a place where she could exercise in peace, away from Margaret and Philip's constant insults. True to her word, the following day, Gladys went to the gym. It was a small, friendly place, and the people there were kind. She felt comfortable as she started her routine on the treadmill, feeling her body come alive with each step. The gym became her escape, her sanctuary. She went there every day, determined to achieve her goal. Gladys could feel herself changing, not just physically, but mentally too. She was growing stronger, both inside and out. Even though Margaret and Philip continued to make life difficult at home, Gladys refused to let them break her spirit. After a few months of exercising and working on her diet, Gladys noticed something strange. Her periods weren't regular anymore. Sometimes they came late, and other times not at all. She began to worry, wondering if something was wrong. So she made an appointment with her doctor to find out what was happening. When she got to the clinic, the doctor listened to her concerns and decided to run some tests. After a while, he called her into his office with a serious look on his face. "Gladys," he said, "based on what we have found, your irregular periods might be due to your condition, PCOS, but don't worry, there are medications that can help you conceive." Gladys looked at him, hope lighting up her face. "What kind of medication, doctor?" The doctor leaned forward and said, "I'm going to prescribe a drug called Clomid. It's a fertility drug that can help you ovulate, which is important if you're trying to get pregnant. But there's something you need to know. For this medication to work, you and your husband must have intercourse frequently, especially during your fertile days. This will increase your chances of getting pregnant." Gladys listened carefully, taking in everything the doctor said. She nodded, feeling a sense of relief. Maybe this was the answer she had been waiting for. "Thank you, doctor," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. She felt a glimmer of hope as she left the clinic, ready to talk to Philip about what the doctor had advised. When she got home, she found Philip sitting in the living room, watching TV. She walked over and sat beside him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Philip, I went to the doctor today," she started, trying to sound calm. "He prescribed a medication called Clomid. It's supposed to help me get pregnant, but the doctor said we need to, be together more often for it to work." Philip didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed glued to the TV, and he let out an irritated sigh. "I don't want any stupid child from you, Gladys," he muttered. "I'm not interested in doing anything with you anymore. You're wasting your time." Gladys felt her heart sink. His words were like a slap to her face. She had hoped that maybe, just maybe, Philip would understand how much this meant to her, but instead he had crushed her hopes once again. Her chest tightened with anger, and before she could stop herself, the words spilled out of her mouth. "You're a fool, Philip," she shouted, her voice shaking with rage. "Do you even hear yourself? You're getting on my nerves. You need to wake up and realize what's going on here. I'm your wife, and all I'm asking for is a chance to have a family, but you don't even care." Philip looked at her, his face cold and emotionless. "I said no," he repeated. "If you want a child so badly, go find someone else, but it won't be with me." Gladys stared at him in disbelief. She couldn't believe how heartless he was being, after everything they had been through, all the struggles, all the pain. This was how he treated her, like she was nothing. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure frustration and anger. Gladys stood up, her hands trembling. "I will have a child, Philip, with or without your help," she declared, her voice strong. "And when that day comes, you'll regret treating me like this." With that, she stormed out of the room, leaving Philip sitting there in silence. She knew she had to be strong. This was her fight now, and she wasn't going to give up, no matter what Philip did or said. Gladys then was motivated and started going to the gym every day. The pain and betrayal she felt at home pushed her to focus on herself, and the gym became her escape. She was determined to reach her goal, not just for the sake of having a baby, but for herself. Each workout felt like a small victory, a step towards reclaiming her strength and independence. At the gym, she met David, a handsome instructor with a kind smile and an encouraging attitude. David stood out from everyone else. He always had a way of making people feel seen and supported, no matter their fitness level. Gladys noticed how he interacted with others, always patient and positive, and it wasn't long before he started giving her tips and advice on how to improve her workouts. "You're doing great, Gladys," David would say after each session, his voice full of encouragement. Those words, so simple yet filled with kindness, touched her in ways she hadn't felt in a long time. Philip had long stopped noticing her efforts or caring about her struggles. But David, he paid attention. He seemed to genuinely care. As the days went by, Gladys found herself looking forward to her time at the gym, not just for the exercise, but also for the moments she'd share with David. They talked more and more after each session, and slowly something started to change in her heart. She began to feel things she hadn't felt in a long time, feelings of excitement and warmth whenever she was around him. He was different from Philip in every way, kind, considerate, and always encouraging. One afternoon, after a particularly tough workout, David approached her as she was cooling down. "You're really improving, Gladys. Your dedication is inspiring," he said, smiling warmly. Gladys felt a flutter in her chest. "Thanks, David. I'm just trying to focus on myself for once." David's smile widened. "And that's exactly what you should do. You deserve it." It was in moments like these that Gladys realized how much she had changed. The love she once had for Philip was gone, replaced by anger and sadness over his betrayal. She no longer saw him as the man she wanted to be with. Every cruel word he spoke, every time he chose Margaret over her, had chipped away at the love she had for him until there was nothing left. David, on the other hand, made her feel valued. He didn't judge her or look down on her. He saw her struggles and admired her strength, something Philip never did. With every kind word and every encouraging smile, David was helping her heal, and Gladys began to see a future without Philip. The more time she spent at the gym, the more she realized how much she had grown. She wasn't the same woman who had let Philip's betrayal break her. She was stronger now, physically and emotionally. Philip began to notice changes in Gladys that left him confused. She didn't seem to care about him anymore. When he spoke to her, she barely responded. It was like he didn't exist in her world. At first, he thought it was because of all the stress from the situation at home, but as time went on, he realized it was something else. One evening, he sat down with Margaret and brought it up. "Gladys doesn't seem to care about anything I do anymore," he said. "It's like she's stopped trying." Margaret, who was lounging comfortably, glanced at him with angry face. "Isn't that what you wanted, Philip? You told her to leave if she couldn't handle things. So why are you surprised that she's acting like this now?" Philip had no answer. Margaret was right. This was what he had wanted, wasn't it? But for some reason, seeing Gladys so distant, so indifferent, bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Meanwhile, at the gym, things were becoming even more interesting for Gladys. She had noticed David's growing interest in her, but she didn't want to admit that she felt something too. One afternoon, after her workout, David approached her. "Gladys," he began, his tone soft but serious, "I need to tell you something." She looked up at him, curious. "What is it?" "I like you," David said, his eyes sincere. "I know you're married, and I don't want to offend you, but I can't hide how I feel anymore." Gladys felt her heart skip a beat. No one had said something so honest and kind to her in a long time. She smiled but said nothing, not wanting to rush into any response. It felt nice to be noticed, to be admired, but she also knew her life was complicated. Later that evening, when Gladys got home, she couldn't stop smiling. She kept thinking about David, the gym instructor, and for the first time in a long while, she felt truly happy. Philip noticed her smiling and felt something was off. "Why are you smiling like that?" Philip asked, his voice sharp. Gladys just shrugged. "It's nothing," she said, still smiling but not explaining any further. Philip's anger began to grow. He wasn't used to being ignored, especially by Gladys. The next day, when she came back from the gym, Philip confronted her. "You need to stop going to the gym," he demanded. "I don't like what's happening. If you don't stop, I'll divorce you." Philip expected Gladys to cry or beg him to change his mind, but she didn't. Instead, she looked him straight in the eyes and calmly said, "I don't care." Philip was shocked. He had never imagined she would say something like that. For years, she had been the one trying to make their marriage work, always trying to please him. But now she seemed different, strong, confident, and not afraid of him anymore. "I don't care if you divorce me, Philip," Gladys continued, her voice calm. "You've treated me badly for too long. I deserve better. If leaving you means I'll find happiness, then I'll leave." Philip stood there, unable to speak. He had always believed he was in control of their relationship, but now it was clear that Gladys had found her strength. The more he tried to control her, the more she slipped away from him. And for the first time, Philip realized he might actually lose her. Philip also noticed something strange. It had been more than 10 months since Margaret said she was pregnant, but there was still no sign of the baby. One evening, he asked her, "Margaret, you've been pregnant for so long now. When are you going to give birth?" Margaret gave him a weak smile and replied, "Very soon, Philip. Don't worry, the baby will come." But what Philip didn't know was that Margaret was never pregnant. She had been lying to him all along. The truth was, Margaret had always been jealous of Gladys. Back in their school days, Gladys always got attention from the boys. She was the pretty, kind, and smart one, and Margaret hated that. Margaret had always felt overshadowed by Gladys. While Gladys married Philip, a wealthy man, Margaret remained single, growing older without a husband. This made her even more bitter. The jealousy grew so much that Margaret decided to betray her best friend by starting an affair with Philip, even though Gladys had no idea what was going on. Margaret saw how much Gladys loved Philip and wanted to ruin her happiness. She thought that by pretending to be pregnant, she could break their marriage for good and take Philip for herself. But now the lie was starting to fall apart, and she was running out of excuses. Philip, clueless about the truth, kept trusting Margaret, unaware that her jealousy had driven her to do something so cruel to his wife, the woman he had once loved. Gladys, on the other hand, was beginning to feel more at peace, especially with her newfound confidence from going to the gym. A few days later, Philip's mother came to visit. As she sat in the living room with Philip, she couldn't help but bring up the issue that had been bothering her for months. "Philip," she began, "what's going on with Margaret? It's been over 10 months since she said she was pregnant, but there's still no baby. This is not normal. When is she going to give birth?" Philip sighed, rubbing his forehead. He had been thinking the same thing lately, but every time he asked Margaret, she gave him vague answers. "I don't know, Mom. She keeps saying the baby will come soon, but I'm starting to get worried too." His mother shook her head in frustration. "Worried? You should be. Women don't stay pregnant for this long. Something is wrong. I've been patient, but it doesn't make sense anymore. You need to find out the truth. What is she hiding?" Philip frowned. His mother's words struck a chord. He had been blindly trusting Margaret all this time, believing her every word. But now even he was starting to doubt her. His mother was right. This wasn't normal. Most women gave birth in 9 months, but Margaret's pregnancy seemed never ending. "I'll talk to her again," Philip said, though he wasn't sure how much more he could push Margaret without causing a fight. His mother stood up, clearly frustrated. "You better figure this out, Philip. This is serious. I want to be a grandmother, and I'm not going to sit around forever waiting for a baby that may not even exist." Philip's heart sank. The possibility that Margaret might be lying was creeping into his mind, but he wasn't ready to face it just yet. After his mother left, Philip sat on the couch, deep in thought. He had trusted Margaret for so long, but now doubts were swirling in his mind. Why hadn't she shown any signs of preparing for the baby? Why didn't she visit the doctor regularly like other pregnant women? The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. Later that evening, he confronted Margaret again, this time more direct. "Margaret, my mum is asking questions and so am I. Why haven't you given birth yet? It's been too long. Are you sure you're pregnant?" Margaret, caught off guard, stammered, "I told you, Philip, it's a complicated pregnancy. The doctor said it's normal for some women to take longer. The baby will come soon, just be patient." But Philip wasn't satisfied with her answer anymore. His mother's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time, he wondered if Margaret had been lying to him all along. Still, he didn't push further. He decided to wait a little longer, hoping that Margaret's promise of a baby wasn't just another empty lie. As days passed, the tension in the house grew. Philip's mother kept calling, asking for updates, and Philip found himself growing more suspicious. Margaret, on the other hand, started avoiding the topic altogether, knowing that her secret was on the verge of being exposed. Margaret's jealousy and lies had brought her to this point, and now the weight of her deceit was becoming too much to handle. One afternoon, Margaret was at home, getting ready for Philip to return. She had grown more and more anxious with each passing day, knowing that her secret could be discovered at any moment. She had managed to fool Philip for months with her fake pregnancy, but she couldn't keep up the lie forever. The pressure was getting to her, and she knew she had to be more careful. As she slipped on her fake pregnancy belly, she made sure it was secure, just like she had done so many times before. Margaret adjusted her clothes, looking at herself in the mirror. She knew Philip would be home soon, and everything needed to look convincing. But that day, something unexpected happened. Philip came home earlier than usual. He had been feeling uneasy about the whole situation with Margaret, and something told him to come home early to check on her. As he walked into the house, he quietly made his way to the bedroom, thinking Margaret was resting. When he opened the door, what he saw left him in complete shock. There stood Margaret, holding her fake pregnancy belly in her hands, adjusting it like a piece of clothing. Philip's heart dropped, his mouth went dry, and for a moment he couldn't even speak. "Margaret, what are you doing?" Philip's voice trembled with disbelief. Margaret froze, her eyes wide with fear. She knew there was no way to hide it now. The lie she had been holding on to for months had crumbled right in front of her. Slowly she turned to face Philip, but the guilt and shame were already written all over her face. Philip's face twisted in anger and heartbreak. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. "So this is why you never let me touch you or rub your belly. All this time you kept saying it was forbidden in your village to sleep with a pregnant woman. How could I have been so foolish to believe you?" He paced the room, his hands shaking with fury. "I trusted you, Margaret. I believed every word you said. And this was all just a lie. How evil can you be?" Tears streamed down Margaret's face as she tried to come up with an excuse, but she knew there was nothing she could say to fix what she had done. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. "Philip, Margaret began, but he cut her off, his voice rising with rage. "Don't you dare say another word." Philip's eyes burned with anger. "You used me. You betrayed me. You ruined my life, and for what? Jealousy? You were never pregnant, were you?" Margaret shook her head, finally admitting the truth. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Philip couldn't take it anymore. He pointed to the door, his voice cold and harsh. "Get out. I never want to see you in this house again. You're nothing but a liar." Margaret tried to plead with him, but Philip wasn't listening. He was done. He had been fooled for too long, and the pain of the betrayal was too much to bear. "I said get out," Philip shouted, his voice echoing through the house. "I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here." Margaret gathered what little dignity she had left and quickly left the house, her fake pregnancy belly forgotten on the floor. As she walked out, Philip slammed the door behind her, his heart heavy with regret and shame. Once Margaret was gone, Philip sank onto the couch, his hands covering his face. He felt completely broken, realizing how blind he had been all this time. The woman he thought was carrying his child had been deceiving him from the start, and now everything was ruined. In his pain and frustration, Philip grabbed his phone and called his mother. When she picked up, he couldn't hold back the tears. "Mum, she was lying to me. Margaret was never pregnant." His mother, who had been suspicious for a while, sighed deeply. "Oh, Philip, I warned you that something wasn't right. You should have listened to me." Philip wiped his eyes, feeling more lost than ever. "What am I going to do now, Mom? I've lost everything." But to his surprise, his mother's tone changed. "You haven't lost everything, Philip. There's still a chance to make things right." Philip frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" His mother paused before answering. "Beg Gladys. When she comes back from the gym, beg her to forgive you. She's the one who truly loved you, Philip, and you let her go. If you want to fix your life, you need to start by making things right with her." Philip's heart sank even further. His mother's words were true, but he wasn't sure if Gladys would ever forgive him for how he had treated her. Still, deep down, he knew he had no choice. He had to try. Later that evening, Gladys came home from the gym, her face glowing with confidence. She had been growing stronger every day, not just physically but emotionally as well. When she walked through the door, Philip was waiting for her, his face full of regret and guilt. He had been rehearsing his apology over and over in his mind, but when he saw her, the words seemed to stumble out. "Gladys, please," Philip began, his voice trembling. "I'm so sorry for everything. I've been so blind. I let Margaret lie to me, and I believed her over you. I regret everything I said, especially about you gaining weight. It was wrong of me. I was so foolish." Gladys stood still, listening to Philip's words. There was a time when she would have been overjoyed to hear him apologize, but now it was different. She had found her own strength, her own happiness, and she wasn't going to let him drag her back into that dark place. Philip's eyes filled with tears as he continued. "Margaret was never pregnant. It was all a lie, and I regret everything. Please, Gladys, give me another chance." But instead of the forgiveness he hoped for, Gladys reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of papers. Without a word, she handed them to Philip. He looked down at them, confused at first, but as his eyes scanned the words, his heart sank. They were divorce papers. "Gladys, no," Philip whispered, his voice breaking. "Please, don't do this." Gladys's face was calm, but her eyes were firm. "Philip, it's too late. You had your chance and you threw it away. I've spent years trying to be the perfect wife for you, but nothing was ever enough. You let your mother, Margaret, and your own pride destroy our marriage. I deserve better than this. I deserve happiness, and I've found it. It's over." Philip felt like the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. He had never imagined it would come to this. He had always assumed that no matter what, Gladys would stay with him. But now she was leaving, and there was nothing he could do to stop her. Gladys turned and began packing her things. As she moved around the house, Philip followed her, his heart racing. "Gladys, please. I'll change. I'll do anything. Don't leave me." But Gladys didn't stop. She calmly folded her clothes, packed her belongings, and zipped up her suitcase. When she was done, she looked at Philip one last time. "Goodbye, Philip," she said quietly. "I hope you find what you're looking for." With that, she walked out of the house, leaving Philip standing there, devastated and alone. He felt like his whole world had fallen apart. How had it come to this? How had he lost the one person who truly loved him? In his frustration and despair, Philip grabbed his phone and called his mother. When she answered, he didn't hold back. "This is all your fault," Philip shouted, his voice filled with rage. "You're the one who made me turn my back on Gladys. You told me to marry Margaret, you pushed me to destroy my own marriage, and now look what's happened." His mother tried to calm him down. "Philip, please, I was only trying to help." "Help?" Philip interrupted, his voice shaking with anger. "You're a foolish mother. You ruined everything, and now I've lost the only woman who ever loved me. Don't you dare come near me again. I never want to see you." Before his mother could say another word, Philip hung up, his hands trembling with fury. He sat down, his head in his hands, filled with regret and shame. But it was too late. Gladys was gone, and there was nothing he could do to bring her back. 2 years later, life had changed for everyone. Gladys, who had spent those years focusing on her health, career, and happiness, was now more beautiful than ever. Her confidence shone through in everything she did, and she had found love again, this time with David, the gym instructor who had helped her find her inner strength. They got married in a simple but beautiful ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. Unlike her marriage to Philip, Gladys was truly happy this time. David loved her for who she was, and he supported her in every way. They laughed together, shared their dreams, and built a life filled with joy and peace. As for Philip, he was left to live with the consequences of his choices. He watched from afar as Gladys moved on with her life, filled with regret for how he had treated her. The house that once echoed with their fights was now empty, and Philip was left alone with his memories and his guilt. He often thought about calling her, apologizing one last time, but he knew it was too late. Gladys had moved on. She had found her happiness, and there was no going back. She and David lived happily ever after, and Philip was left to realize that the greatest mistake he had made was letting her go. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.